Have you ever paused just long enough to notice how some people grow older and yet seem to grow stronger? Perhaps you've seen it, a neighbor in their 80s carrying groceries with ease, a soft-spoken friend who still remembers every birthday, or maybe it's you, quietly defying the story the world tells about aging. They say that after a certain age, the body must decline, the mind must forget, and the spirit must slow down. But what if that isn't the whole truth? What if aging isn't about fading, but deepening? In the stillness of each day, there are signs, gentle, almost invisible signs, a simple step without strain, a full night's sleep that ends with energy, a quiet steadiness while standing on one foot. These are not miracles, they are reflections. Reflections of a body that still listens, a mind that still sharpens, and a soul that still rises. Today, together, let us look at aging from a different light, not with fear, but with reverence, not as a falling away, but as a rising into something deeper. What you will hear in this reflection are not just physical tests, but quiet invitations to rediscover the strength that still lives in you. Strength not only of muscle, but of memory, not only of balance, but of presence. Let us begin, gently, mindfully, and see what wisdom is waiting to be remembered. Part 1. Rising without hands. The strength of independence. There's something quietly powerful about the act of rising from a chair without needing your hands. At first glance, it seems ordinary, something we do a dozen times a day without much thought. But if we pause and look deeper, this simple movement becomes a mirror, a reflection not just of our physical condition, but of our relationship with aging, with dependence, and with our own inner strength. Imagine a woman named Eleanor. She's 82, lives alone, and has always been fiercely independent. The kind of person who prided herself on never needing help, even for the little things. But one morning, as she stood up from the breakfast table, she caught herself pushing hard against the tabletop. It was such a small thing, a simple act of leverage, but it startled her. Was that just habit, she wondered, or has something inside me quietly weakened without notice? That afternoon she tried again. This time slowly, deliberately, with no hands. Her legs trembled, her breath caught, but she managed. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't just a physical test. It was a conversation with her body, a reminder that strength, like trust, must be renewed again and again. In Buddhism, the body is not viewed as a burden to be overcome, but as a sacred vessel, a temple of awareness. When we rise from a seated position, we're not just lifting the body upward, we're lifting ourselves from inertia, from fear, from the quiet acceptance of decline. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world, but with our movement, we shape the self." Standing without support is a form of embodied mindfulness, a practice in reconnecting with the present and the power it holds. Let us not forget that this movement, as mundane as it may seem, calls upon nearly every part of the body: your thighs, your calves, your abdominal muscles, your spine, and your sense of balance. It demands coordination, courage, and most importantly, self-trust. And as we age, trust in the body often becomes harder to hold on to. We are told, subtly, repeatedly, that we should slow down, sit more, expect less. But the danger in that advice is that it creates a mindset of fragility. Before we know it, the chair becomes not a resting place, but a quiet prison. There is a Zen teaching that says, sit, just sit, walk, just walk. Above all, don't wobble. It may sound humorous at first, but in truth, it's an invitation to be fully present in every act, including the act of standing. When we rise without the help of our hands, we are, in a way, performing a ritual, a small ceremony of self-sufficiency. We are saying to the universe, I am still here, I am still strong, I am still becoming. And if you cannot yet do this without help, that's okay too. What matters is not how easily you rise, but how consciously you approach the effort. Every day is a chance to build strength again. Eleanor began with small steps, 10 minutes of seated leg lifts each morning, followed by slow, mindful squats, breathing deeply with each movement. Within weeks, she could stand without pushing off, and more than that, she believed in her legs again. And in that belief, a spark returned to her eyes, a quiet pride. So, the next time you rise from a chair, don't rush it. Feel the earth beneath your feet, the breath in your lungs, the quiet wisdom in your spine. Ask yourself, are you lifting yourself, or are you leaning into what no longer serves you? Because this small action holds a deep truth, that independence is not measured by grand achievements, but by the subtle, daily reclaiming of our strength. And oh, what a blessing it is to rise still in a world that keeps expecting us to sit down. Part 2. Walking without breathlessness. The path of life still flows. There is something deeply symbolic about the way we walk through life. Every step, no matter how small, is a gesture of movement, of continuity, of participation in the living rhythm of the world. And yet, as we grow older, many of us begin to walk less, not because we have no places to go, but because the body whispers warnings, a twinge in the knee, a catch in the breath, a sudden fatigue that wasn't there before. We begin to slow down, pause more often, or perhaps avoid walking altogether. And slowly, quietly, life begins to shrink. But what if walking, even just briskly from the kitchen to the mailbox, is one of the most sacred forms of meditation still available to us? What if the pace at which we move through the world is not just a measurement of physical fitness, but a reflection of how deeply we are still engaging with life itself? Take Leonard, for example. He was 79 and still sharp as a tack, loved crosswords, gardening, and laughing with his grandkids. But he hadn't noticed how his daily walks had grown shorter. "I thought I was just being cautious," he said. Then one afternoon, trying to make it around the block, he had to stop halfway to catch his breath. That pause hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't just his legs that had slowed, it was something in his spirit. And so he made a quiet promise to himself: start again, slowly. He began walking to the mailbox with purpose, breathing in deeply, noticing the wind, the rustling leaves, the quiet call of birds. Day by day, his steps grew quicker, his confidence stronger. He wasn't just exercising, he was rejoining the world. In Buddhist thought, walking meditation is a deeply revered practice. Unlike seated meditation, where stillness reigns, walking meditation teaches us to be with movement, to let the feet guide the mind back to the present. One breath per step, one thought per stride. And for elders, this form of mindfulness can be both strengthening and soothing. The Buddha himself spent much of his life walking, through forests, along rivers, among fields, not rushing, not chasing, simply moving with awareness. So let us ask gently, when was the last time you walked not out of necessity, but out of joy? Brisk walking, not running, not marching, just walking with a touch of urgency, reveals so much more than we imagine. Studies show it correlates closely with longevity, cognitive sharpness, and emotional well-being. Why? Because when you can walk quickly without gasping for air or gripping a rail, your heart is working well, your lungs are filling efficiently, your muscles are still firing in harmony. It's a full-body conversation that says, yes, I'm still here, and I'm still strong. More importantly, it's an act of choosing life. Perhaps today, instead of avoiding the stairs or driving to the corner store, you choose to walk. And while walking, you let the earth hold your weight, the air fill your lungs, and the moment carry you forward. That is not mere exercise. That is returning to your body, to your breath, to your place in the great rhythm of being. And if your steps are slower now than they used to be, do not despair. Even the river moves gently in winter. What matters most is not how fast you walk, but how fully you arrive with each step. So go ahead, walk as if you are late for something beautiful, something that matters. Because you are, you're walking back to the pulse of your own life. Part 3. Balancing on one foot. The middle way in the body. There's a stillness, almost sacred, that reveals itself when we try to balance on one foot. It sounds so simple, like a game children play without effort. And yet as we age, standing on one leg becomes far more than just physical. It becomes a metaphor. A question whispered through the body. Can you still trust yourself to stand in life's uncertainty? Balance is not just about muscles or posture. It's a quiet collaboration between the nervous system, the eyes, the inner ear, the brain, and the breath. It's the body remembering how to trust the ground beneath it, and the mind remembering how to let go of fear. Let me tell you about Judith. She was 81 when the realization came, not in a hospital or a fall, but in her bathroom. One morning as she brushed her teeth, she noticed her hand clutching the edge of the sink tightly. Just to steady myself, she thought. But something about that moment made her pause. It wasn't always like this. When did she stop standing freely? When did her body start doubting itself? She tried something simple, lifting one foot a few inches off the floor, just to see, and immediately she wobbled, reached for the counter, heart racing. It wasn't just her body that trembled. It was the quiet fear that had crept in unnoticed. That afternoon, Judith made a choice. Not to be fearless, but to be present. Every morning she stood beside the wall and lifted one foot. At first, she needed support. But each day she breathed slower, stood taller. Within weeks she could balance for 10 seconds, then 15, and not just with her body, but with her whole being. And with that steadiness came something more precious than strength: confidence, freedom. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a path known as the middle way, a way between extremes, not indulgence, not denial, not rigidity, not collapse, just enough, just center. In many ways, balance in the body reflects that same wisdom. To balance is not to be perfectly still. It is to sway gently without falling, to return to center after each subtle movement, to live not in resistance, but in rhythm. When we practice balancing, even for a few seconds each day, we are not merely preventing falls, though that too is important. We are reconnecting with the living wisdom of our body. We are telling our nervous system, I am listening. We are reminding our muscles, you are still awake. And we are teaching our heart, you are not too old to trust again. Try it now, if you wish. Stand beside a sturdy chair or countertop. Take a slow breath in, then gently lift one foot. Just a few inches is enough. Close your eyes if you're brave, or keep them open and focused. Feel the tiny shifts in your hips, your ankles, your toes. That's your body learning. That's your inner balance remembering. If you find yourself wobbling, smile. Wobbling is not failure. It is proof that you are engaged, that you are not numb, that you are still in the dance. And if you can balance, even just for 10 seconds, that is not a small thing. It is a quiet miracle. It means your systems are still working together, Your brain is still alert, your reflexes are still agile, and your spirit is still grounded. So let us not wait until the fear of falling takes hold. Let us meet the body where it is, gently, patiently, and teach it to trust again. Because in learning to balance once more, we rediscover not only our strength, but our grace. Part 4. Getting down and back up. Surrendering, then rising. There is something deeply humbling, and at the same time quietly heroic, about getting down onto the floor and rising back up without help. It is one of those movements that as children we do instinctively, and often we roll, we crawl, we kneel, we leap. But over time, as the years collect and the joints stiffen, this once simple action becomes something many of us avoid, not because we've forgotten how to move, but because perhaps we've stopped believing we can. To descend to the floor and rise again is, in its essence, a symbol of life itself. We fall, we soften, we surrender. And then, if we are willing, we gather strength, steady breath, and lift ourselves once more. This, in the language of the body, is the art of resilience. Frank was 83 the afternoon his great-granddaughter spread out a board game on the living room carpet. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation as she called to him, "Grandpa, come sit with me." He hesitated, not because he didn't want to join her. In fact, his heart ached to sit by her side, but because he wasn't sure he could get back up again. That hesitation, that invisible moment of fear, struck him harder than any physical pain. When did I start avoiding the floor? He asked himself later. When did I start avoiding life? The next morning he began small, just kneeling by his bed for a moment, using the mattress to help himself up. Then the next day he added gentle leg lifts, practiced slow squats, focused on deep, intentional breathing, and little by little the strength returned. The following week, when his great-granddaughter visited again, he didn't hesitate. He knelt, he played, and more importantly, he rose, smiling. In Buddhist philosophy, the act of bowing is not an act of submission, but one of reverence. A bow is a reminder, I am still humble before life. I touch the earth to remember where I came from, and then I rise to remember who I still am. The floor, in this sense, is more than just a physical surface. It is a place of grounding, of release, of remembering our humanness. And to rise from it, on our own, is to reclaim a piece of ourselves that we might have quietly handed over to fear. Getting down and up again involves the entire body, the legs, the arms, the core, the spine, the breath, and the nervous system. But even more than that, it involves trust. Trust that we are not broken. Trust that strength can return. Trust that age is not a sentence, but a season, and in every season, there is still growth. And if you feel uncertain today, if the floor feels far away or impossible, know this: beginning again is not shameful. It is sacred. Every small attempt to kneel, to lower, to breathe, and then to rise again is a form of spiritual practice. Just like sitting in meditation or chanting a mantra, returning to the floor is a way of coming back to the truth. This body still belongs to me. So perhaps today you try, not with force, not with fear, but with kindness. Sit on the edge of the bed, slide gently to your knees, hold on to a chair if you must. And when you rise, even if it's slow, even if it's shaky, let it be a moment of quiet triumph. Because in that motion lives a truth no number can measure. You are not just enduring age, you are participating in life. And what a beautiful thing it is to surrender to the ground, only to rise again, more aware, more alive, more whole than before. Part 5. Carrying a full bag. The weight we still hold. There is something quietly profound about the simple act of carrying a full bag of groceries. It's one of those everyday tasks that rarely get celebrated. No one applauds you for bringing in the shopping. But tucked within that ordinary effort lies a beautiful truth. The strength to lift, to bear weight, to move forward while holding something real is not just a physical ability. It is a metaphor for life itself. Walter was 80, retired from construction but still proud of his sturdy hands and his steady back. For years, he made it a point to carry all the groceries from the car in one trip, just as he did when he was 40. His neighbors would smile watching him shuffle past with 3 bags on each arm, a quiet grin of satisfaction on his face. But over time, he began to notice something. The bags felt heavier. The stairs seemed steeper. One afternoon, he had to stop halfway up to rest, groceries still in hand. It wasn't just the physical pause that shook him. It was the realization that his sense of self, his independence, his pride was slipping, unnoticed. Later that evening, he sat quietly with a cup of tea, reflecting not on the groceries, but on the weight of it all. Not just what he had tried to carry up the stairs, but what he had been carrying silently in his heart. The fear of decline, the dread of dependency, the question that haunts many elders: am I still strong enough to carry my life? In Buddhist philosophy, there's a teaching about the bundle of reeds. It says we must be careful not to cling to the things we carry, whether physical or emotional, because what we grasp too tightly often becomes our suffering. But there's also wisdom in choosing what we carry, the load that strengthens us, the responsibilities that give life meaning, the acts of self-reliance that whisper, "You are still whole." When we carry a bag of groceries without strain or struggle, we are doing far more than just bringing food to the kitchen. We are affirming that our muscles, joints, grip, coordination, and heart are still working in harmony. And even more than that, we are declaring to the world, I am still contributing. I am still useful. I still matter. Walter didn't give up. He began with the smallest things, squeezing a tennis ball each morning to rebuild grip strength, lifting light dumbbells while watching the evening news, doing wall push-ups beside the fridge. Within a month, not only had his strength returned, but so had his confidence. That next trip up the stairs, groceries in hand, felt like a victory parade, even if no one else was watching. There's a silent kind of courage in continuing to carry things when the world quietly expects you to set them down. And not just physical loads, but emotional ones too. The griefs, the joys, the memories, the responsibilities. For many older adults, continuing to carry their own bag, be it groceries or something far deeper, is not a refusal to accept help, but a sacred act of staying present in their own lives. So the next time you pick up a grocery bag, pause for a moment. Feel the weight in your hand. Feel your back straighten, your balance shift, your body awaken. This isn't just muscle memory, it's life memory. It's your body saying, I still remember how to move with purpose. And if someday the bag feels too heavy, remember this too. Asking for help is not weakness, it is wisdom. But until that moment comes, if you can carry what life hands you, with both hands, with open eyes, with quiet gratitude, then you are not just aging, you are embodying strength. Because life in the end is not about avoiding the weight, it's about learning how to carry it with grace. Part 6. Climbing stairs. Ascending the inner mountain. There is a kind of honesty in climbing stairs that few other movements demand. Unlike a walk across flat ground, stairs ask more of you, more strength, more breath, more balance, more will. They do not lie. One step might feel easy. The next, a quiet challenge. And by the time you reach the top, Your heart has had its say. So have your legs, your lungs, and your spirit. Irene, 82, had once been the kind of woman who took stairs 2 at a time. Lively, adventurous, never one to wait for elevators. But 2 years ago, after a mild fall, not even a serious one, but enough to shake her confidence, something in her changed. She stopped using stairs whenever she could. Why risk it? She told herself. Elevators became the default. Even at home, she began avoiding the upstairs closet where her winter coats were stored. Not because she couldn't, but because she feared she couldn't. And then came the visit to her daughter's house. A simple afternoon tea. The only bathroom, up a full flight of stairs. Irene started the climb slowly, hand on the railing, breath tightening with each step. By the top, she was flushed, embarrassed, and silently grieving the independence she hadn't realized she had begun to lose. But rather than retreating from that moment, Irene used it. The next morning, she decided, no more avoiding. She started with 3 stairs, up and down, each day, then 5, then 10. She practiced breathing deeply as she climbed, focusing not on the effort, but on the presence, the rhythm, the blessing of still being able to try. Within a month, she could climb a full flight without stopping. And more than regaining strength, she reclaimed something far more fragile, her sense of dignity. In Buddhism, the mountain is often used as a symbol, not of triumph or conquest, but of inner elevation. To climb is not just to ascend physically, but to rise internally. Each step, a breath. Each breath, a choice. As Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." In this way, climbing stairs becomes more than a task. It becomes a meditation in motion, a slow, deliberate act of participation in the present. Physiologically, stair climbing is one of the best indicators of cardiovascular health. It calls upon leg strength, balance, breath control, and core stability. Doctors often use it as a litmus test. If you can climb a flight of stairs without needing to rest or hold the railing, it's a powerful sign that your systems, heart, lungs, muscles, are still aligned, still strong, still working with you, not against you. But beyond the physical, there is the emotional ascent, because climbing stairs, especially after age 80, means confronting fear. It means looking at the incline ahead and saying, yes, I will try. That kind of courage can't be measured with a heart monitor. It is something quieter, deeper, the courage to keep rising in a world that expects you to sit down. If today you can still climb stairs without stopping, that is not a small thing. That is a blessing. It is your body whispering, I remember, I can. And if today stairs feel hard, know this, they are not a wall, they are a path. Begin with one. Begin with breath. Begin with faith in your own becoming. Because in the end, it's not about reaching the top, it's about never forgetting that you still can. So climb, slowly if you must, but climb. And with every upward step, feel yourself rising, not just in body but in spirit, toward the summit of your own resilience. Part 7. Remembering clearly, the mind that remains awake. There is a particular sadness many of us carry quietly as we age, the fear of forgetting. Not just forgetting where we placed the keys or why we walked into a room, but forgetting names, stories, voices of loved ones, pieces of who we are. Memory, once taken for granted, begins to feel fragile. And in that fragility, many of us wonder, am I fading? Am I still myself? But let me tell you something beautiful. Memory is not a measure of perfection. It is a living process, a current that flows best, not through pressure, but through presence. And if you, even now, can recall what you had for dinner last night, or something your friend said last week, or the details of a conversation that touched you, then your mind, dear one, is still awake. Howard, now 84, is a quiet man. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, people listen. There's a calm wisdom in his words, like leaves falling in still water. He remembers birthdays, not just his children's but his high school teachers. He recalls the color of the suit he wore the day he proposed. He remembers his old address from 60 years ago and the sound of his mother's voice calling him in for dinner as the sun set over the porch. When asked how he keeps his mind so sharp, Howard smiles gently and says, "I stay curious." He reads, he writes little notes. He listens, really listens to the people around him. He plays cards on Sundays. He never stopped learning, and in that engagement, his mind has remained, as the Buddhists say, like a still pond, able to reflect everything clearly, because it has not been disturbed by the storms of neglect. In the teachings of the Buddha, mindfulness, sati, is often described as the practice of remembering. Not just remembering facts or names, but remembering to return to the present, remembering to see, to feel, to be here. And in that light, memory becomes more than storage. It becomes presence, a sign that the flame inside has not gone out, but continues to burn steadily, even through the winds of time. Cognitive function is not solely about intelligence. It's about circulation, attention, engagement. Like a garden, the mind needs tending. And so many of us, sadly, begin to starve it of nourishment as we age. We stop challenging it, stop feeding it new information, stop inviting it to dance with language, with puzzles, with poetry, with people. The result is not inevitable decline, but quiet disuse. But here's the good news: the brain, even in its later years, remains beautifully plastic, able to grow new connections, rewire pathways, awaken clarity, like a field that blooms again in spring, if only it is watered. If you still find joy in conversation, if you can follow a story, if you remember the laughter of a moment long past, then you are not fading, you are remembering, you are participating in the life of your own mind. And if memory feels slower now, be kind to yourself. Let it come. Don't chase it. Don't demand perfection. Invite it back like an old friend, with patience, warmth, and curiosity. So perhaps today, you pick up a book you once loved. You write a letter. You tell a grandchild a story from your childhood. You close your eyes and recall a favorite meal. Every act of remembering is an act of presence. And presence is the truest sign that your mind is still awake, still capable, still clear, still deeply alive. In the gentle silence of age, the mind doesn't have to race. It only needs to stay open, alert, and at peace. For even if time forgets, the heart remembers, and through the heart, so does the soul. Part 8. Waking up refreshed. When sleep is still sacred, there's a quiet miracle that happens when you wake up in the morning and feel good. Not just awake, not just aware, but clear, light, and ready. For many, this simple gift becomes elusive with age. Nights grow longer, sleep more restless, and mornings begin not with energy, but with fatigue. But if you are someone who still wakes up refreshed, with steadiness in your step and clarity in your thoughts, then your body is speaking, and what it's saying is, "I am still healing." Ruth, now 86, had long believed that poor sleep was just part of growing old. She would wake several times a night, feel groggy each morning, and need long naps during the day just to function. Her doctor ran tests. Nothing serious, they said. It's just age. But something inside Ruth disagreed. This doesn't feel like me, she thought. There must be a better rhythm. She began to observe her habits like a gentle detective, not judging, but simply noticing. She dimmed the lights after dinner, turned off the television an hour before bed, switched her phone for a paperback, opened her curtains each morning to let the natural sunlight greet her. Within 2 weeks, her body began to respond. She fell asleep faster, slept deeper, and for the first time in months, she woke up feeling present. Sleep, in many ways, is the body's deepest conversation with itself. It is the sacred time when cells repair, the brain resets, and the immune system fortifies its defenses. But more than that, it is when the mind, unburdened by tasks and timelines, slips quietly into the vastness of stillness, the very stillness that Buddhists call shunyata, or emptiness, not in the sense of lack, but of openness. In Buddhist practice, rest is not laziness, it is medicine. Monks and nuns follow mindful sleep rituals, not because they are fragile, but because they understand that the quality of one's waking life is deeply shaped by the quality of one's rest. A mind that rests well does not react sharply. A heart that rests well loves more gently. A body that rests well moves like a stream, smooth, steady, and alive. To wake refreshed is no small thing. It means your hormonal cycles are still in balance. Your nervous system is still calm. Your breathing during the night has been full and nourishing. It means your body has not forgotten the ancient rhythm of rest and renewal, the rhythm that connects all beings, from trees to tides to your own breath, rising and falling. And yet, so many resist sleep. We stay up late with worry. We bring yesterday into our beds and tomorrow into our minds. But what if sleep were a sacred practice, a letting go? What if, each night, we allowed the day to wash over us like a wave and trusted that morning would bring not just another cycle, but another chance? If you wake most mornings feeling alert, not anxious, strong, not scattered, then know this: your body is still honoring its wisdom. And if you do not, there is still hope. Small changes, offered gently, can make a world of difference. Return to rhythm. Return to breath. Let the world quiet down before you do, and trust that sleep, real, healing, sacred sleep, will return to you, not as a demand, but as a blessing. So the next time you open your eyes to a new day and feel the peace of true rest in your bones, pause. Whisper a soft thank you. For this is no small gift. It is your body remembering how to live, and your soul reminding you that you're still becoming. Conclusion: you are still becoming. If you've journeyed with us through each of these quiet signs, standing with strength, walking with purpose, balancing with grace, rising from the ground, carrying with confidence, climbing with resolve, remembering with clarity, and waking with peace, then you've touched something rare, something precious, the deep truth that aging does not always mean fading. In fact, for many it means deepening. We live in a world that often defines aging by what is lost: youth, speed, sharpness. But what if, instead, we chose to define it by what is gained, by presence, by patience, by the ability to listen more deeply to our bodies, to respond more kindly to ourselves, and to rise again each day with quiet dignity? Even if, as you listened, you found that some of these signs have softened or slipped, that's not failure. That's not failure. That's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of transformation. Every breath you take, every small effort to strengthen, remember, or move with intention is a declaration: I am still here. I am still here. I am still becoming. In Buddhist wisdom, The present moment is never too late, and no step is ever wasted. Whether we are 60, 80, or beyond, our life continues to unfold, not in the number of years we have lived, but in the quality of our attention, the depth of our love, and the gentleness with which we walk our path. So, if this message touched something within you, I invite you, softly, not urgently, to begin again. Begin with one mindful step, one simple breath, one moment of remembering that your body, even now, carries a quiet strength, and your spirit, even now, holds a light that has not dimmed. You are not just aging, you are evolving. You are deepening into a version of yourself that has learned how to endure, how to care, how to let go, and most importantly, how to rise. Until we meet again, may you walk with steadiness, may you sleep with peace, and may you carry the wisdom of your years not as a burden, but as a blessing.